8 reasons why no Terminator movie since T2 has been nearly as good as the originals. The Terminator franchise began with two of the most influential and well-executed action movies of the 20th century, but the series has always struggled to recapture the quality for the first films for a variety of reasons. Based off a fever dream in which visionary director James Cameron envisioned a metal skull haunting him, the first Terminator movie blew audiences away in 1984 with its edgy horror and sci-fi stylings, skyrocketing the career of Arnold Schwarzenegger along the way. Terminator 2: Judgment Day somehow improved upon the formula, creating one of the best sequels of all time. Unfortunately, it's been a struggle for the franchise to return to the lofty heights of critical and box office success it once sat on. For a while, the series' struggle could have been attributed to the absence of James Cameron's involvement, with the legendary sci-fi director and writer having no involvement with the first three sequels to Terminator 2: Judgment Day. However, this assumption was disproved with Cameron's story credit in Terminator: Dark Fate, which received a similarly mixed reception. The upcoming 7th Terminator film will have plenty of challenges to overcome in order to finally create a satisfying sequel. Ironically, part of what makes Terminator 2: Judgment Day such a perfect action film wound up hurting the franchise in the long run. Skynet's plans have always revolved around sending Terminators back in time to eliminate the leadership of the human resistance. When killing Sarah Connor didn't work, it makes sense that John Connor as a child would be considered an easy target. But with John Connor saved, it's hard to manufacture further conflict for the series to subsist off of. Not only that, but T2 ends with Skynet's takeover completely prevented, something future films had to immediately retcon in order to continue the franchise. As a result, future films have had to go out of their way to explain how Skynet managed to take over anyway, such as in Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines. Alternatively, an entirely new artificial intelligence had to be introduced simply so the story could continue in Terminator: Dark Fate, which created Legion as a stand-in villain for Skynet. The conclusive ending of Terminator 2 was simply too perfect a way to close out the story of Terminator, giving any potential sequel too much of a barrier to entry. Since the failure of Terminator: Salvation, each subsequent Terminator sequel has established an independent timeline that ignores select films. Terminator: Dark Fate is a requel that attempts to pick up the story after the second film once again, whereas Terminator: Genisys even ignored Judgment Day, marketing itself as a direct sequel to only the Terminator. The head-spinning result is 3 separate timelines that delicately pick and choose which films are connected and which aren't, confusing general audiences to the point of apathy. If the series had simply stuck with one continuity, even including weaker entries, it could have stood a better chance. While James Cameron did return as a producer and story writer on Terminator: Dark Fate, he never lent his directorial abilities to the franchise after Terminator 2: Judgment Day. Beyond the complaints around the canon and disconnection of the films from Terminator 3 onward, each subsequent entry has suffered from an unmistakable lack of heart within its main cast. The humanization and character work Cameron was able to draw from a relatively straightforward action flick is an underrated part of the first 2 films the following entries have simply lacked. Even if it isn't Cameron himself, future Terminator movies are in desperate need of more solid performances. In the late 80s and early 90s, the early Terminator films' dark portent of the future of technology such as robotics and AI seemed like an omen of distant time. Yet as technology has aged alongside the franchise, Skynet has become less and less fantastical, with artificial intelligence creeping into more and more aspects of daily life. This makes creating films centering around killer robots harder to get people excited for, with audiences possibly seeing the well-worn territory as being too obvious or too true to life to get invested in.